I made the switch from hiking boots to trail runners about 5 years ago. And I did that after I went on a trip with a friend of mine where we had to do some water crossings and there was just no way around it. So we walked through the water and my waterproof hiking boots got soaked. That night I spent about 4 hours at the fire trying to dry them out, and they still never dried out, but they didn't melt in the heel. So I ended up with a melted shoe that was soaking wet in the morning, and I decided at that point that I should have listened to all of YouTube and all of the backpackers in YouTube and hikers and made the switch to a trail runner that's not waterproof, just for the sake of letting them dry out. So I did. The next trip I went on, I bought a pair of trail runners, and now I'm 2 or 3 sets of trail runners in, and I thought it would be a good idea to share with you some things that I like about the trail runners, where hiking boots might make more sense, some things that I don't like about the trail runners, maybe even these ones in specific, what to expect, what things you can look out for, where they'll fail, and just kind of some general information for people who might be looking to make that switch. A lot of the hiking that I do is in the Rockies here in southern Alberta in Canada, and it is really hard on footwear. If you're doing backpacking, multi-day trips, you're going through water crossings, you're going over boulder fields, you're climbing up and down scree slopes, and there's just a lot of impact on a shoe. So when you're looking at the difference between a trail runner and a hiking boot, protection is a big deal. One of the things I had to get used to really quickly when I made the switch to a trail runner was the amount of protection that shoe offered my foot. I mean, first and foremost, you have a lower heel, right? For the most part, you can get higher heel ones, but I just like these. So that lower heel means that quite often I have to watch for things at heel or ankle level at a greater level of attention than I would have normally, because I've smoked my heel on some roots and some stumps and some things that are really just, it's like taking a hockey puck off the ankle. Another area is on the toe. These are designed to be ran on like this. So if you're walking like this, the motion is just very different. So you'll see a lot of impact along the toe of this shoe, where on a hiking boot, you have a higher, more protected front end. I find that quite regularly, I will stub my toe on a rock. And that's usually coming down a hill when your toes are pressed against the front and you hit something, or you catch it on the way up as you're taking a step. That will send a little more pain into your toes than you would if you were in more of a protected boot. The one area that I've noticed the most difference in protection in my foot is specifically on the side of my foot. You'll see these have, let's see if I can focus it there. These have a ton of damage on the side of this, and this is that pinky toe, or the side of the foot along the pinky toe, being smashed into or catching rocks or sliding into things, and it hurts. It's one of the things that I do not like about trail runners is the lack of protection on this space specifically, because I'm clumsy right there apparently. The main reason a lot of people go to these is that they're so much lighter, and if you get a pair that's not waterproof, they don't hold the water. You'll get wet. Your feet are going to get wet no matter what. If you're crossing streams, if you're hiking in low vegetation in the morning when there's dew, you're just going to get wet. But these will dry out a lot quicker while you're hiking in dry areas than a hiking boot will once it wets out. One thing I noticed about these shoes in particular compared to hiking boots and compared to the last pair of trail runners I had was that even though they get soaked through really quickly, the insoles come out really quickly. And this insole, which is a little beat up, even though it's not very cushy, not the most comfortable, and doesn't like make my foot feel like I'm on a cloud, the way that this one is built for the Peregrine doesn't hold any moisture. It floats, it doesn't hold moisture, it's sealed. But that being said, it also, when it gets soaked, rubs on the bottom of the shoe. So you get this wet squeak where the rubber meets the waterproof membrane of that thing, which is not a bad thing, but you do get that squeak. But it allows the shoe to air out really, really quickly. Something I didn't know to look for when I was first buying trail runners was the rigidity of the forefoot, or where your foot lands when you're taking a step. And I noticed this specifically really quickly when you're hiking in boulders. There's the ability to step on angles and steep and sharp rocks where if you don't have some sort of rock plate in here, like these have a nice solid base, and inside here there's actually a rock plate in there that is, I think it's carbon fiber. I don't know, it's all covered in gunk right now, but that protection for your foot while you're stepping onto sharp things is really important when you're looking for a pair of shoes that you're going to be doing that kind of activity in. If you're just running on a trail and it's pebbles and small rocks, not as big a deal. But if you're taking longer trips into the backcountry and you're carrying weight and your foot is landing on angled surfaces, it makes a big difference to have that rock plate in there. And these peregrines didn't really get a fair shake at life. They had a rough start. I was getting ready to go on a 5-day backpacking trip with some friends. We were going to cover 120 kilometers. It was going to be half bushwhacking. It was going to be a really intense kind of time. And I went for a hike the week before and I blew out the heel of my previous trail runners. So I had to go pick up a brand new pair of shoes. So I picked these up the week before a 100-kilometer backcountry trip. And as a result, I didn't get to break them in. Now, what that did was when I first started hiking in them, it was rainy and it was muddy and there was some slippage on the trail. Things were sliding and moving in ways that weren't normal to my footfall. And I was also trying out a new pair of socks. I was trying a synthetic pair of socks instead of my Darn Toughs, which I have since gone back to. What that did was it caused some abnormal wear in the heel. So if you look, you can actually see in the heel of these, there's actually a weird worn spot in both shoes that's worn through the heel cup in a place that's not natural to my stride, because that first trip they got soaked right away. They were in mud, we were on angled surfaces. There wasn't really a break-in period for these to fit my foot. So since I've gone back to the Darn Toughs, not a problem, but that first trip I got pretty bad blisters from them. And every time since, when I've worn a synthetic sock, with this shoe specifically, I've got a blister if it's anything over 17 kilometers. That's just kind of coincidental with the way they wore and the way my foot landed in them and the way I broke them in and my foot and how it works. So it's just something I was really aware of when I had to replace them, was the way that heel cup fits and spending some time specifically to break them in before I take them on a longer trip. Good advice for anybody. Test out your gear, try it, break it in, know how to use it, know how it's going to feel. Never a bad idea. I mentioned that the heel blew out on my last pair of trail runners, and I found that to be the common theme in all of the trail runners I've had. Now this is the second pair, and you'll notice that the heel, you'll see the slit that's here. That slit actually wore all the way through, and you can see my finger through the shoe. This is the same thing that happened with the other pair. I'm not sure why. I think it might have something to do with these being designed to be landing on the foot and the heel kind of be a quicker movement on a trail runner, because they're for trail running, right? They're not designed for you to land on your heel with your full weight and an extra 60 pounds on uneven surfaces all the time. So it's my opinion that landing on the heel of the different angles and the impact on that actually caused a change in these specifically, and the last ones where they blew out, that had this be the failure point from them. And you can see there's a ton of flex in there, right? Like that's a big hole. To the point where actually on my last day wearing these, I was bailing out of a trip and I was hiking about 15 kilometers out on a gravel road. Now you'll see if I pull this other shoe out, and I'll take the insole about the other one, there's actually still rocks in there. And those rocks, when you are landing, because they're inside there, are jabbing you up in the foot. So when you're looking at the construction of a trail runner, just be aware that you're probably going to wear out the heel first, and that those creases and those seams along the heel are going to be impacted first. So just a heads up when you're looking for them. I'm going to admit there's times I go back to my hiking boots though, my waterproof hikers, and those times specifically are if I know I'm not going to be doing water crossings, so I know I won't get waterlogged, if I know the weather is going to be nice and sunny. But those two things alone don't make that difference, right? If the weather's nice and sunny and you're not doing water crossings, a lighter, more agile shoe is still just a good idea. But when I'll go back to the trail runners, when it's those two conditions, as well as I know that there's mud and dirt and grime and grease, and that I know that I want to keep my foot sealed into something, that I don't want to get mud and dirt and water in there from just the condition of the trail itself. Not crossings, not vegetation, not all those things, but just from the trail itself. When I know it's muddy, rained yesterday, whatever, I'll go back to a hiking boot, because it just makes it more comfortable on my feet when I get to camp. They're not wet. The boot's not wet out. But if it's going to wet out, I'm going to a trail runner. I also never thought to look for the specific lacing in these. In a hiking boot, the laces actually run higher up on your leg, and it locks around your ankle in a different place, right? It locks kind of more closer to your shin than your actual ankle. These are actually securing around the bones of your ankle and the back of your heel. So that the way to tighten that up and the way to keep that secure and reduce the motion is actually really important. So if you're going to look for like a lower shoe or a trail runner of any kind, one of the things you want to make sure is that they have this second loop back here. What this second loop allows you to do is tie what they call a marathon loop or a runner's loop. And it basically means you can cross the laces over. There's videos on that. But it locks your heel in a much different way. So they sell trail runners without them, which I don't know why. Make sure if you're looking for trail runners, or you're switching to trail runners, or even if you've bought trail runners before and you want to buy a new pair, that you are getting a pair with that second loop in the back at the top that is designed to help lock your foot in place. Long story short, trail runners are great. They have a great place for backpacking and hiking. They also have some downsides, and the hiking boots are also great. It just depends on where you're going and what you're doing. Just get what you want, use them the way you want, and learn and grow. My name's Nathan. This is Backpacker-ish. Like, comment, subscribe. Meh.